Thank you to the Reimagining Global Fashion Business, New Models, Values, and Ideas Conference for including my research, The Hunger, Nascent Realities of Dematerialized Fashion Design and Consumption. COVID-19 has necessitated the exponential growth of an already powerful and aggressive new form of fashion retail, online device-based consumption. This virtualizing of fashion consumption has in turn dematerialized garments completely. This presentation focuses on the contemporary engagement with fashion within the digital realm. Although late to the party, the Canadian consumer engagement with online fashion has grown exponentially. Garments are now purchased before they are engaged with physically. Therefore, within the new realities of device-based fashion design and consumption, the wow factor and virtual considerations are paramount. I have explored this in depth in my article, Browsing the Virtual Boutique with Baudrillard, the new realities of online device-based luxury fashion design and consumption. This research uses an object-based method, a process wherein both intrinsic and extrinsic information was gathered from the close examination of a garment using theoretical frameworks from Maida and Kim, Alison Matthews-David, Valerie Steele, and Jules Proun. This data was then combined with relevant theoretical frameworks adapted from Celia Lurie, Ursula Franklin, Joseph Turow, and Marshall McLuhan to form grounded theory. My research object was purchased online from a Canadian brand based in Montreal, a garment that was virtual before it became physical. In fact, a handsome red plaid shirt. You can't get any more Canuck than that, eh? And through this observation, the ascendant contemporary structure of contemporary fashion retail was analyzed. The shirt is fabricated from a lightweight plaid flannel cloth. A voyageur would have been pleased to have worn it under a buckskin jacket or a capote when traveling through the wilds and waterways of fur trade era Canada. It is made of 100% cotton. A tag at the neck says that it was made in China. There is a CR code sewn into a side seam. A tag sewn prominently onto the front right-hand side says, "Ce vêtement a été conçu à Montréal et pensé pour la vraie vie." This garment was designed in Montreal with real life in mind. Real life, maybe, but not at first. As I bought it online, therefore it was a virtual object before it was physically tangible for me. Thus, the consumer experience was mediated by online marketing, choice delimiters within the brand portal itself, as well as ongoing consumer surveillance and data-directed marketing. Upon observation in real life, it does seem to be put together well. The seam finishes are flat felled, not just serged together. It comes with 2 replacement buttons, one large, one small. It's very soft and has a brushed surface. I definitely enjoy wearing it. Unfortunately, I do not know how it was made, and there is no way to find out how the wheres and hows of manufacture. The brand is very proud to state their Canadian DNA, but nowhere on their website do they describe the processes of actually producing their goods or the origin of their fibers. Canada does not produce cotton, so that is certainly not homegrown. I imagine this obfuscation is intentional. I also strongly suspect my shirt to be a fast fashion item. A market category categorized by Dr. Anna Majoy of the University of British Columbia as low-cost clothing collections that mimic current fashion luxury trends. As such, fast fashion helps sate deeply held desires among young consumers in the industrialized world for luxury fashion, even as it embodies unsustainability, end quote. While I am definitely not a young consumer, whatever went into the manufacture of my shirt, I certainly embody when I wear it. In addition to the physical characteristics, the methods of procurement of the shirt also warrant analysis, namely, the dematerialization of the modern boutique that has now migrated online, the incipient forms of digital marketing to engage consumers, and ultimately, the recontextualization of the body and understanding of the self, all of which are now heavily mediated through online consumption. The digital revolution arrived late for Canada compared to other affluent fashion consumers, but we certainly made up for lost time, as current online and particularly device-based shopping has proven both immersive and pervasive for the Canadian consumer. This has affected every aspect of production and distribution. Canada has had no choice but to evolve and has evolved unknowingly, moving the modern Canadian consumer into a brave new world of fashion that is nothing like what came before. One theorist who offers highly relevant theory for this research is eminent Canadian physicist and technology critic, Dr. Ursula Franklin, who described the processes wherein emergent technology and human behaviors enmesh within quotidian engagements. Described as one of Canada's most accomplished scientists and educators and one of its renowned feminists and peace activists, Franklin was a physicist working in metallurgy, and her research from the 1950s on strontium-90 found in baby teeth was instrumental in achieving a moratorium on atmospheric nuclear weapons testing. In her brilliant 1989 Massey College lecture series, The Real World of Technology, Franklin also identified with remarkable prescience many important issues around technology and society, salient to analysis of modern online fashion retail. Franklin stated of the adoption of nascent technologies that many technological innovations have been introduced in order to change the boundaries of human and social activities with respect to time and space, end quote. Time and space have certainly been disrupted with the technological online migration of the boutique, and this virtualizing of fashion has in turn dematerialized garments completely. Thus, now the engagement is primarily with the technology and not the tactile. Franklin separated the definition of technological development and application into two distinct categories: prescriptive technologies and holistic technologies, noting they involve distinctly different specializations and divisions of labor, and consequently, they have very different social and political implications, end quote. With online shopping, it is the technology that is undoubtedly guiding the process, and as such, it currently falls into the first category. All of the mediating and directive aspects of technology that Franklin identified can be seen fully manifested within modern online retail, which affords access to a nearly limitless selection of product, yet all within an environment that reifies, as she identified it, technology as practice. Of particular interest is that Franklin's analysis can be applied to both the consumption and the production sides of contemporary fashion, as each are pre-shaped by their respective processes and the technology that guides their respective practices. Franklin identifies that the prescriptive production model is perceived and constructed as a process removed from any links to a larger context. And this enables easy adoption into a variety of situations. Unfortunately, despite the apparent utility of this model, as Franklin states, such an approach discounts and disregards all effects arising from the impact of the production activity on its surroundings. Such externalities are considered irrelevant to the activity itself and are therefore the business of someone else. The pitfalls to this myopic vantage point are clear, as vital factors like pollution or the physical and mental health of the workers, which in the production model are considered other people's problems, and they are externalized. This can be identified in the fashion context in the arm's length global sweatshop that has been set up in globalized, deregulated fashion manufacturing. In fact, Franklin could be directly addressing the fashion industry when she noted that the discounting of context, as well as the failure to consider external interactive effects, led to the deterioration of the world's environment. As she states, Processes that are cheap in the marketplace are often wasteful and harmful in the larger context, and production models make it quite easy to consider contextual factors as irrelevant. End quote. This is perfectly applicable to modern fast fashion manufacturing, wherein human lives and the environment are currently selling cheap in the global sweatshop. There is, however, another model described by Franklin, and that is the holistic. This she aligns with the notion of craft and artisans who make situational decisions with both their hands as well as their minds. It is a process that grows and is shaped by the unique conditions of the artisan, the artifact, and the creative environment. Within this model, the respect for the process itself is placed paramount over the efficiency of production. As she states, growth occurs, is not made. Within a growth model, all that human intervention can do is to discover the best conditions for growth and then try to meet them. In any given environment, the growing organism develops at its own rate. Franklin contrasted these holistic and prescriptive technologies and stressed the differences in their respective divisions of labor. She states, it is characteristic of prescriptive technologies that they require external management, control, and planning, end quote. They thus reduce worker skill and autonomy. They are, however, exceedingly effective in terms of invention and production. What is gained in efficiency is accompanied by a commensurate loss in creativity and mutability of the entire process itself. The fundamental difference between the two models is that in the prescriptive model, things are fabricated in conditions which are, at least in principle, entirely controllable, even where such control is not complete or completely successful. There is at least the assumption implicit in the model itself that improvements in knowledge, design, and organization can occur. And as a result, all essential parameters are controllable. All production becomes stabilized and predictable in this model. Growth is not so predictable, however. Therefore, it is considered unreliable, suspect. This has led to prescriptive production models adopted as almost the only guides for public and private discussions that direct both policy generation and industry, even in contexts where the growth model might have been more fruitful or appropriate. This has huge impacts on both how things are done and the ideological parameters on how they can be done. As Franklin states, the unchallenged prevalence of the production model in the mindset and political discourse of our time and the model's misapplication to blatantly inappropriate situations seems to me an indication of just how far technology as practice has modified our culture. The modifications to culture catalyzed by the production model are considerable, as there are larger impacts of the ubiquitous adoption of this model. As Franklin observed, fascination with new technologies can change the focus of our perception of what is actual and real, end quote. The impacts of technology and the larger systems thinking that accompanies them directs thought as well as action, conditioning us to accept orthodoxy as normal and to accept that there's only one way of doing things, even when the model is wholly unfit for the production. As Franklin states, technology is planned and run on the basis of a production model that is no longer appropriate for the tasks that we want to undertake. And how? Through basic operating models, the contemporary fashion industry creates myriad problems. These occur locally, but have global impacts. Current globalized models of fashion production have proven to be a disaster for both workers and the environment at times. The fundamental disconnect between product and production only reinforces this. There is no way to connect with the supply chain history of my garment. I unquestionably accept that I am not given access to this information, yet I sponsor and support the entire chain with my money. Thus, as a consumer, I am again shaped by the methods of consumption as much as I am by the goods themselves. The flip side of all this, though, is that the vulnerability and blatant directive mechanisms of the system are also paradoxically its biggest asset. It really depends on what those directives are. All of this technology can be recalibrated and the parameters realigned to support sustainable and ethical outcomes, rematerializing the process to offer consumers new parameters that support ethical and non-toxic materialities. The challenge is to integrate holistic principles into the parameters that determine choice in the online boutique, where they currently are only used to narrow choices and direct consumer purchasing. They could instead communicate material and production particularities and illuminate the supply chain in an exponentially more in-depth way than a cardstock hang tag or a page on a website ever could. In conclusion, while the first model is described by Franklin, the prescriptive, can be identified as the one that can be seen applied in contemporary life in the virtual shopping arena, it is actually the other model proposed by Franklin that could be applied instead to ameliorate, offering true personal consumer freedom and consumer choice. After COVID, we are that much more enmeshed within the virtual realm. Whether the engagement is one that is guided by forces that seek to control, confine, and coerce the consumer into being sold yet more homogenous fast junk, or conversely, an authentic community that supports and nurtures true individualism and innovation, is really up to what the consumer demands. As Franklin identified, systems shape processes. There are currently many systems that work extremely well and aid people through technology, so we can choose to reimagine digital fashion systems to implement an entirely different set of parameters of choice and guidance. There is no reason why they cannot be tweaked to support amelioration instead of degradation. The technology is all in place, and as it is a tool, it is neither inherently good nor bad. Thank you. This research will be published as Technology as Social Instruction, Ursula Franklin and the Dematerialized Fashion Marketplace through the McLuhan Center for Culture and Technology, University of Toronto, this November.